The crack of a gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Shafter, Texas, just as Winifred Lawrence stepped off the stagecoach, her leather-bound journal clutched tightly to her chest. It wasn't the welcome she had expected for her first day in the frontier town, but it certainly confirmed everything she'd read about the Wild West. The year was 1875, and she had traveled all the way from Boston to take up the position of schoolteacher in this remote outpost of civilization. "Don't you worry none, miss," the stagecoach driver said, handing down her trunk. "That's just the marshal running off another troublemaker. Happens 'bout once a week." Winifred nodded, trying to appear unfazed though her heart raced. At 23, she had never ventured further west than Philadelphia, and everything about Shafter seemed alien to her educated sensibilities. The main street was little more than hard-packed dirt lined with weathered wooden buildings. Men in dusty clothes and wide-brimmed hats eyed her curiously as she stood beside her luggage, her emerald green traveling dress marking her as clearly out of place. "You must be the new schoolmarm," a woman called, hurrying across the street. She was plump and motherly, with gray-streaked hair tucked beneath a simple bonnet. "I'm Martha Wilson, head of the school board. We've been waiting on you for nearly a month, Winifred Lawrence," she replied with a small curtsy. "I apologize for the delay. There were complications with the railroad and then the stagecoach schedule." Martha waved away her explanation. "You're here now. That's what matters. The children have been running wild without proper schooling since old Miss Pembroke took ill and returned east." She gestured to a young boy loitering nearby. "Tommy, come help with Miss Lawrence's trunk. We'll get you settled at Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house." As they walked, Martha pointed out the town's establishments: the general store, the saloon, the small church that doubled as the town hall for meetings. Winifred tried to take it all in, mentally mapping the layout of her new home. "And there's the schoolhouse," Martha said proudly, pointing to a modest white building at the edge of town. "It's not much, but we added a new slate board last year and got some proper desks shipped in from San Antonio." Winifred gazed at the simple structure with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. It was a far cry from the grand Boston Academy where she had learned, but it represented everything she had come west for: independence, purpose, and the chance to bring knowledge to a place that needed it. "When do I start?" she asked, already mentally preparing her lessons. "Monday morning. That gives you 3 days to settle in and prepare. We have 26 students ranging from 6 years old to 17. Some only come when they can be spared from ranch work." Winifred nodded, her mind already filling with questions about curriculum, materials, and the students' current level of education, but she held her tongue. There would be time for that later. For now, she needed to rest from her journey and gather her thoughts. Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house proved to be a neat 2-story building with a small garden out back. The widow showed Winifred to a modestly furnished room with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a simple writing desk beneath the window. "Supper's at 6 sharp," Mrs. Abernathy informed her. "Breakfast at 7. You'll have to make your own midday meal or eat at the cafe." Left alone, Winifred sank onto the bed, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion of weeks of travel. She had come to Shafter with grand ideas of bringing education and refinement to the frontier, but now, faced with the reality of this dusty cattle town, doubt crept in. What did she really know about teaching ranch children? What if they rejected her Eastern ways and book learning? She forced these thoughts away. She hadn't come all this way to surrender before she'd even begun. Opening her trunk, she unpacked her books, her most prized possessions, and arranged them carefully on the small shelf above her desk. Shakespeare, Emerson, mathematical treatises, natural science volumes, and her favorite collection of world maps. These would be her weapons in the battle against ignorance. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and introductions. It seemed the entire town wanted to meet the new schoolteacher, from the mayor to the blacksmith. Winifred answered the same questions dozens of times. Yes, she had come alone. No, she had no family in Texas. Yes, she had attended a proper teaching college in Massachusetts. Monday morning arrived bright and clear. Winifred dressed carefully in her most professional attire, a high-necked navy blue dress with minimal ornamentation, and pinned her chestnut hair into a neat bun. She wanted to present the perfect image of a capable, serious educator. She arrived at the schoolhouse an hour early to prepare, her arms laden with books and papers. The building was unlocked, just as Martha had promised, and Winifred stepped inside, taking in what would be her domain. The single room was larger than it appeared from outside, with rows of wooden desks facing a larger teacher's desk on a slightly raised platform. The promised slate board dominated the wall behind it. Simple glass windows allowed light to stream in, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Winifred set her materials on the desk and began writing her name on the board in her neatest script, Miss Lawrence. Beneath it, she wrote the day's lessons, divided by grade level. She had just finished when she heard the scrape of boots on the wooden floor. Turning, she found herself face to face with a man she hadn't met during her weekend introductions. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in the practical garb of a cowboy, denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a vest. His face was tanned and weathered by the sun, with the beginnings of lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often. Those eyes, she couldn't help noticing, were a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin. "School doesn't start for another half hour," she said, unconsciously straightening her posture. The stranger touched the brim of his hat. "Isaac Keller, madam. I'm just delivering these." He held up a small crate of apples. "My ranch sends them over for the little ones." Sort of a tradition on the first day with a new teacher. "Oh." Winifred felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "That's very kind. Thank you, Mr. Keller." He set the crate on her desk and glanced around the schoolroom. "You've got it looking proper already." Old Miss Pembroke never was one for organization. "You knew the previous teacher well?" Winifred asked, arranging the apples in a neat pyramid. "Everyone knows everyone in Shafter," he replied with a half-smile. "Town this size doesn't allow for strangers." He studied her for a moment. "Except newcomers like yourself, Miss Lawrence." "How did you know my board's right behind you?" he said, nodding to where she had written her name. "Of course." She felt foolish now. "Well, thank you for the apples, Mr. Keller. I'm sure the children will appreciate them." He nodded and turned to go, then paused at the door. "Word of advice, Miss Lawrence. These kids aren't like Eastern children. They're ranch-raised, practical, hardworking, and they don't much see the point in poetry or ancient history." Winifred lifted her chin. "Every child deserves a complete education, Mr. Keller. The classics have value even on the frontier." To her surprise, he grinned. "I don't disagree with you. Just saying you might want to start with something they can relate to." He touched his hat again. "Good luck today. You'll need it." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving Winifred with a mixture of irritation and curiosity. Who was this cowboy to give her teaching advice? And yet, his words nagged at her as she made her final preparations. The students began arriving shortly after, filing in with varying degrees of enthusiasm. The youngest came with bright eyes and nervous excitement, clutching their slates and primers. The older ones slouched in with the practiced indifference of teenagers everywhere, though Winifred caught several casting curious glances her way. "Good morning," she said once they were all seated. I am Miss Lawrence, your new teacher." She gestured to the board behind her. "As you can see, we have a full day ahead of us." A small boy in the front row raised his hand immediately. "Miss, are them apples for us?" Several children giggled and Winifred smiled despite herself. "They are indeed, a gift from Mr. Keller's ranch, but first we have work to do." The morning progressed better than she had feared. The younger children were eager to please, and while the older students were more reserved, they weren't openly disrespectful. She started with reading for the little ones and arithmetic for the older group, moving between the divided sections of the classroom. It was during the history lesson that the questions began. "Miss Lawrence," called a girl of about 12, "why do we need to know about the Roman Empire when we live in Texas?" Winifred opened her mouth to give her standard answer about the foundations of civilization when she remembered Isaac Keller's words. "Well, Sarah, the Romans built roads and aqueducts that helped their empire thrive. In many ways, what we're doing here in the West, establishing towns, creating trade routes, building infrastructure, mirrors what they did thousands of years ago." The girl considered this, then nodded. "Like how the railroad's coming through next year, making a way for people to travel easier." "Exactly," Winifred said, pleased by the connection. "The Romans would have understood the importance of railroads perfectly." This sparked more questions about roads, about government, about how ancient civilizations compared to their own growing nation. Winifred found herself fielding queries from all sides, and for the first time that day, she saw real engagement in the older students' eyes. The pattern continued through the afternoon. For every lesson she introduced, the students, particularly the older ones, peppered her with questions, not just about the subject at hand, but connecting it to their lives in Shafter, to ranching, to the changes coming with the railroad and telegraph. By the time the final bell rang, Winifred was exhilarated but exhausted. The children filed out, most taking an apple as they left. She collapsed into her chair, both pleased with her first day and overwhelmed by how much energy it had required. She was gathering her papers when a shadow fell across her desk. Looking up, she found Isaac Keller leaning against the doorframe, hat in hand. "Mr. Keller," she said, surprised. "Have you come for your crate?" "Thought I'd check how your first day went," he replied. "Saw the last of the young uns leaving with apples and smiles, so I'm guessing it wasn't a complete disaster." She couldn't help but laugh. "No, not a complete disaster. Though I've never been asked so many questions in my life. These children are intensely curious. Ranch kids see everything as practical. They want to know why and how things matter to their lives." He stepped into the room, examining the lessons still written on the board. "Looks like you covered a lot of ground." "I tried to follow your advice," Winifred admitted. "About making connections to things they understand." A slow smile spread across his face. "Did it work?" "Surprisingly well," she said. "Though now I have 100 new questions to research for tomorrow's lessons." Isaac pulled up one of the student chairs and sat down, its small size making him look comically oversized. "Try me. I might save you some research time." Winifred blinked at him. "I beg your pardon, ask me," he said simply. "Whatever questions you have about ranching, about Shafter, about what these kids know and don't know, I'll answer every one." "You're a rancher, not a teacher," she pointed out. "True enough. But I've lived here all my life, run cattle since I was old enough to sit a horse, and I know every family whose children sit in these desks." His blue eyes held a challenge. "Unless you'd rather spend your evening poring over books that won't tell you what you really need to know." Winifred hesitated. It was highly improper to sit alone with a man she barely knew, even in the schoolhouse. And yet, the practical side of her acknowledged the sense in his offer. She needed to understand her students' world, and Isaac Keller was offering a direct path to that knowledge. "Very well," she said finally. "But I have a great many questions, Mr. Keller. I wouldn't want to take up your entire evening." He settled more comfortably in the small chair. "I've got nowhere pressing to be, Miss Lawrence. Ask away." And so began a pattern that would shape the months to come. Each day after school, Isaac would appear at the schoolhouse door, and Winifred would ask him everything she needed to know to make her lessons relevant to her students. How cattle ranching worked, why water rights were so contentious, which families were feuding and which children shouldn't be seated together. The history of Shafter that wasn't recorded in any book. In turn, she found herself telling him about her life in Boston, her education, and her dreams of bringing knowledge to places that needed it. He listened with genuine interest, occasionally challenging her assumptions but never dismissing her ideals. 2 weeks into this arrangement, Winifred realized they had strayed far from practical questions about teaching. They were simply talking, sharing stories and ideas as the afternoon light faded to dusk through the schoolhouse windows. "It's getting late," she said reluctantly one evening. "Mrs. Abernathy will wonder where I am." Isaac stood, returning the child's chair to its desk. "I could walk you back to the boarding house." The offer was innocent enough, but it would mean being seen strolling through town with him. Tongues would wag, and yet Winifred found herself nodding. "That would be kind of you, Mr. Keller." "Isaac," he corrected her. "After all these conversations, I think we can dispense with formalities when students aren't present." She smiled. "Then you must call me Winifred." The walk to Mrs. Abernathy's took only 10 minutes, but it was enough time for several townspeople to observe them together. Winifred saw Martha Wilson watching from the general store porch, her expression speculative. At the boarding house steps, Isaac removed his hat. "Same time tomorrow. I'll have a new list of questions," she promised. He grinned. "I'd expect nothing less." As predicted, the town took notice of their daily conversations. Winifred began receiving knowing looks from shopkeepers and parents. The mothers who brought baked goods to the schoolhouse made comments about that handsome Keller boy and how nice it was that he took an interest in education. Winifred deflected these remarks, insisting that Mr. Keller was merely helping her understand the community better for the sake of her students. In truth, she wasn't sure herself what was developing between them. Isaac was unlike any man she'd known in Boston, straightforward, practical, without pretension. He'd had little formal education, yet he possessed a natural intelligence and curiosity that matched her own. He respected her mind and her profession, never suggesting that teaching was merely a way for her to pass time until marriage, as so many men back east had done. One Friday afternoon, as October painted the surrounding hills with autumn colors, Isaac arrived at the schoolhouse with something hidden behind his back. "I have a proposition," he said without preamble. Winifred looked up from the essays she was grading. "What kind of proposition?" He revealed what he'd been hiding: a wicker picnic basket. "Tomorrow's Saturday, no school. I thought you might like to see more of the country than just Shafter's Main Street." Her heart quickened. "You're inviting me on a picnic." "A riding picnic," he clarified. "I've got a gentle mare that would suit you. Thought we could ride up to Cottonwood Creek, have lunch, maybe see some of the prettier parts of the county." It was a far more personal invitation than their schoolhouse talks. A deliberate step beyond professional consultation into something that could only be called courtship. Winifred knew she should consider carefully, weigh the potential for gossip against her growing feelings for this forthright cowboy. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'd like that very much." His smile was worth any amount of town gossip. "I'll collect you at 10 then." Mrs. Abernathy gave her a knowing look when Winifred mentioned her plans the next morning. "Mr. Keller's a good man," the widow said. "Owns the Circle K ranch outright since his father passed. No debts, no vices that anyone knows of. You could do worse, Miss Lawrence." "It's just a picnic," Winifred protested, though her careful choice of her prettiest riding habit suggested otherwise. Isaac arrived precisely at 10, leading 2 horses, his own Rangy bay and a dappled gray mare with gentle eyes. He helped Winifred mount with steady hands at her waist, the brief contact sending a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the October sunshine. They rode at an easy pace out of town, following a well-worn trail that wound through rolling hills, dotted with live oaks and mesquite. The landscape was nothing like New England's dense forests and rocky shores, but it had its own rugged beauty: open skies, dramatic cloud formations, and endless horizons that made Winifred feel both small and strangely free. "Your ranch is in this direction?" she asked as they crested a hill that offered a view of the surrounding countryside. "About 5 miles further on," Isaac confirmed. "Good water, decent grazing land. My father chose well when he settled here after the war." "The Civil War," he nodded. "Fought for the Confederacy, though he never held with slavery. Just believed states should govern themselves. Came west afterward like a lot of men who couldn't face going home. And your mother," a shadow crossed his face, "died when I was born. It was just Pa and me until I was 17. Then fever took him too." "I'm sorry," Winifred said softly. "It must have been difficult running a ranch alone at that age. Had good hands who stayed on, taught me what I needed to know." He glanced at her. "What about your family?" "My parents are still in Boston. Father is a professor of literature. Mother teaches piano. I have 2 younger sisters, both studying to be teachers as well." "A family of educators," Isaac observed. "They must be proud of you bringing learning to the frontier." Winifred hesitated. "They didn't entirely approve of my coming west. They thought I should accept a position at a ladies' academy in Philadelphia, where my aunt could chaperone me properly. And yet here you are, riding unchaperoned with a cowboy." There was amusement in his voice. She lifted her chin. "I came west to make my own decisions, to see more of the world than just Boston drawing rooms. And what do you think of our part of the world so far?" He gestured to the panorama before them. Winifred took in the vast landscape, so different from the crowded streets and formal gardens she'd grown up with. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Wilder than I expected, harsher in some ways, but there's a freedom here I never felt in Boston." Isaac's expression softened. "That's why most of us came west. For the freedom." They continued riding, Isaac pointing out landmarks and telling stories about the area's history, both the recent settlement by white ranchers and the longer presence of the Comanche and Apache, who had once claimed these lands as hunting grounds. Cottonwood Creek proved to be a pretty spot where a clear stream wound through a stand of tall cottonwood trees, their leaves turning golden in the autumn air. Isaac helped Winifred dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. She felt the warmth of them through her riding habit, and when she met his eyes, something unspoken passed between them. He spread a blanket beneath the largest cottonwood while Winifred unpacked the basket, revealing fried chicken, biscuits, apple pie, and a bottle of lemonade. They sat side by side, closer than they would have dared in town, and ate while watching the play of sunlight through the leaves above. "This is wonderful," Winifred said, accepting a slice of pie. "Thank you for bringing me here." "Been wanting to for weeks," Isaac admitted. "Just wasn't sure if you'd agree to come." "Why wouldn't I?" He gave her a wry look. "Educated Boston lady like you. Wasn't sure you'd want to be seen with a rough cowboy who never finished school." The vulnerability in his confession touched her. Isaac, I've never enjoyed anyone's company more than yours these past weeks. Your intelligence and knowledge don't come from school books, but they're no less valuable. That's kind of you to say. It's the truth. She gathered her courage. I look forward to our talks every day. They're the highlight of my time in Shafter. His eyes darkened and he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused from rope and reins, warm against her smaller hand. Mine too, he said quietly. They sat in companionable silence, hands joined, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. Winifred knew they were crossing a line, that her reputation in town would be affected if anyone knew how close they were sitting, how he held her hand as if it were precious. Strangely, she found she didn't care. "You're not what I expected when I came west," she said at last. "And what did you expect?" She smiled. "I'm not entirely sure. Cowboys in dime novels are usually less thoughtful, more prone to shooting things and less interested in discussing Roman aqueducts." Isaac laughed, the sound echoing across the creek. "And school teachers in those same novels are usually stern old spinsters with spectacles and rulers for rapping knuckles, not beautiful young women who ask endless questions and ride out unchaperoned with local ranchers." The compliment made her blush. "Do you really find me beautiful?" In answer, Isaac leaned closer, his free hand coming up to gently touch her cheek. "The most beautiful woman I've ever seen," he said softly. "May I kiss you, Winifred Lawrence?" Her heart pounded so hard she was certain he must hear it. "Yes," she whispered. His lips were gentle on hers, the kiss tender and questioning at first, then deepening as she responded. Winifred had been kissed before chaste pecks at society dances in Boston, but nothing like this. This was a man's kiss, honest and passionate, stirring feelings she hadn't known she was capable of. When they finally parted, she was breathless, her hand somehow having found its way to his shoulder. Isaac's eyes were dark with emotion, his breathing as unsteady as hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the day you turned around in the schoolhouse and looked at me like I was trespassing," he confessed. She laughed softly. "I thought you were the most handsome man I'd ever seen, standing there with your crate of apples. Then we've both been fools, waiting this long." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch reverent. The rest of the afternoon passed in a golden haze of conversation, stolen kisses and shared dreams. Isaac spoke of his plans for the Circle K, expanding the herd, breeding better stock, building a larger house someday. Winifred told him of her hope to establish a proper library in Shafter, to bring books and knowledge to a place where they were scarce. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they reluctantly packed up the remains of their picnic and mounted their horses for the ride back to town. Isaac reached across the space between them to take Winifred's hand one last time before they came in sight of Shafter. "I'd like to call on you properly," he said. "Do this right, if you're willing." Winifred squeezed his hand. "I'd like that very much." Their courtship became the talk of Shafter over the following weeks. Isaac called at Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house every Sunday after church, taking Winifred for proper chaperoned walks. He still came to the schoolhouse after classes, but now they often walked back to town together, no longer hiding their growing attachment. Martha Wilson cornered Winifred after church one Sunday in early November. "You've certainly made an impression on our Isaac Keller," the older woman said with a knowing smile. "Never seen him so smitten." Winifred tried to maintain her composure. "Mr. Keller has been very kind, helping me understand the community better." Martha snorted. "Is that what the young people are calling it these days? Well, he's a good catch, dear. Just be careful not to scandalize the town too much. You are the school teacher, after all. The children look up to you." The reminder of her position sobered Winifred. She had responsibilities beyond her personal happiness. The school board could dismiss her if they felt her behavior reflected poorly on the town or its children. That afternoon, she mentioned Martha's comments to Isaac as they walked along the creek that ran behind the town. "Are we causing a scandal?" she asked, genuinely concerned. Isaac took her gloved hand, tucking it into the crook of his arm. "Nothing scandalous about proper courtship, Winnie. Martha Wilson just loves to stir up gossip. But she's right that I need to be mindful of my position. If the school board felt I was setting a poor example." "Do you regret our friendship?" he asked quietly. "Our courtship?" "No." The vehemence of her response surprised them both. "No," she repeated more softly. "Being with you is the most natural, most right thing I've ever felt." His expression warmed. "Then let the gossips talk. We know what's between us." What was between them continued to deepen as autumn gave way to winter. The schoolhouse, now heated by a pot-bellied stove that Isaac helped install, became their primary meeting place. After the children left each day, they would sit by the stove's warmth, talking about everything and nothing: books she loved, horses he was training, their childhoods, their hopes. Sometimes he would help her prepare lessons, offering practical insights about ranching or local history that made her teaching more relevant to her students. Other times, she would read to him from her favorite books, introducing him to Shakespeare and Thoreau, delighting in his thoughtful responses. December brought a rare snowfall to Shafter, transforming the dusty town into a temporary wonderland. The children were nearly uncontrollable with excitement, and Winifred finally gave up on formal lessons, instead taking them outside for an impromptu natural science class on snowflakes and weather patterns. They were examining snow crystals on black cloth when Isaac rode up, his horse's breath steaming in the cold air. "Miss Lawrence," he called, dismounting, "thought your students might enjoy some proper snow activities." From behind his saddle, he produced several large tin trays. "These make fine sleds on that hill behind the schoolhouse." The children cheered, and soon the air was filled with their shrieks of laughter as they took turns sliding down the gentle slope. Winifred watched from the sidelines, her heart full at the sight of Isaac showing a small boy how to steer his makeshift sled. "You're very good with them," she said when he joined her. "Kids are easy," he replied, brushing snow from his coat. "Just need someone to take them seriously and listen to their ideas." "Is that why you always answer my endless questions?" she teased. His expression turned serious. "I answer your questions because I love the way your mind works. The way you're always reaching for more knowledge, more understanding." He took her mittened hand in his. "I love a lot of things about you, Winnie." Her breath caught. It was the closest either of them had come to declaring their feelings outright. "Isaac, Miss Lawrence." A child's voice interrupted whatever she might have said. "Come try the sled. Mr. Keller, tell her she has to try it." Isaac's serious expression melted into a grin. "Duty calls, Miss Lawrence. Your students require a demonstration of practical physics." Before she could protest, he was leading her to the hill, helping her arrange her skirts on a large tray, and giving her a gentle push that sent her flying down the slope amid the delighted cheers of her students. The Christmas season brought a flurry of town activities: a pageant at the church, special dinners, and an elaborate Christmas Eve celebration in the town hall. Winifred threw herself into helping her students prepare a musical performance, teaching them carols and helping them make paper ornaments for the town's communal tree. Isaac was busy too, completing winter preparations at the Circle K, but he never missed their afternoon conversations. One particularly cold day, just before the school's Christmas break was to begin, he arrived at the schoolhouse with a mysterious wrapped package. "Early Christmas gift," he explained, setting it on her desk. "Wanted to give it to you privately." Winifred unwrapped it carefully to find a beautifully crafted wooden lap desk with an inkwell, compartments for paper, and her initials WL inlaid in darker wood on the lid. "Isaac," she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "It's exquisite." "Made it myself," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Thought you could use it for grading papers or writing letters home. You made this." She looked up at him in wonder. "I didn't know you were a woodworker." He shrugged, almost embarrassed. "My pa taught me. Said a rancher needs to be handy with all kinds of tools." He watched anxiously as she opened and closed the lid. "Do you truly like it?" In answer, Winifred rose from her chair and, heedless of propriety, wrapped her arms around him in a tight embrace. "It's the most thoughtful gift I've ever received. Thank you." His arms came around her, strong and sure, holding her close. For a long moment they stood that way, the warmth of their embrace keeping the winter chill at bay. When she finally pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion. "I have something for you too," she said softly, "though it's not nearly as magnificent." She retrieved a package from her desk drawer and handed it to him. Isaac unwrapped it carefully to reveal a book, a collection of poetry by Whitman. "This is your personal copy," he said, recognizing the volume she had read from during their conversations. "I can't take this from you. I've marked all my favorite passages," she explained. "The ones that remind me of you, of us, of this place. I want you to have it." He opened the book, seeing the careful annotations in her elegant handwriting. "I am large, I contain multitudes," he read aloud from one marked passage. His eyes met hers. "This reminds you of me. You contain so much more than people see at first glance, Isaac." The thoughtful rancher who discusses philosophy. The practical cowboy who crafts beautiful gifts with his hands. The man who answers endless questions with patience and insight. She touched his arm. "Yes, you contain multitudes." He set the book down carefully and took her hands in his. "Winnie, I need to ask you something important." Her heart began to race. "Yes. The Christmas Eve celebration, would you attend as my partner? Not just walking together or sitting nearby, but properly as a couple." "I know it's making a public statement, and with your position, yes," she interrupted, squeezing his hands. "I would be honored to attend with you, Isaac." His smile was like sunrise. "I'll collect you at 6 on Christmas Eve then." The town hall was transformed for Christmas Eve, decorated with pine boughs and paper stars made by the schoolchildren. A large tree stood in one corner, adorned with candles and the children's handmade ornaments. Trestle tables lined the walls, laden with food brought by every family in the community. Winifred wore her best dress, deep green silk with velvet trim that she'd brought from Boston, saving it for special occasions. Mrs. Abernathy helped her arrange her hair, pinning it up with her mother's pearl combs. "You look beautiful, my dear," the widow said, stepping back to admire her work. "Mr. Keller won't know what hit him." Sure enough, when Isaac arrived to escort her, he stood momentarily speechless in Mrs. Abernathy's parlor. He was dressed in his Sunday best, a dark suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, his hair neatly combed, his normally weathered face freshly shaved. "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he said finally, offering her his arm. The celebration was in full swing when they arrived, the town hall filled with music, laughter, and the delicious aromas of holiday cooking. Heads turned as they entered together, and Winifred felt a moment of self-consciousness at being the center of attention. Then Isaac's hand covered hers where it rested on his arm, a reassuring pressure, and her anxiety melted away. Let them look. Let them see that she had found something precious here in this dusty Texas town, something far more valuable than the approval of gossips. They danced, they ate, they talked with neighbors and friends. Winifred's students ran up to show her the treats they'd received, and she admired each one with genuine interest. Several of the ranch hands from the circle came to pay their respects to their boss and meet Miss Lawrence, who we've heard so much about. As midnight approached, the celebration began to wind down. Families with young children headed home, while others gathered around the piano for one last round of carols. Isaac led Winifred to a quiet corner near the Christmas tree. "I have one more gift for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "I wasn't sure when to give it, but—" Well, Christmas Eve seemed right. He produced a small box wrapped in silver paper. Winifred's hands trembled slightly as she unwrapped it, revealing a velvet jeweler's box. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, was a ring, a delicate gold band set with a perfect pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "Isaac," she whispered, her heart pounding so hard she could scarcely breathe. He took her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. "Winifred Lawrence, I know we've known each other only a few months, but in that time, you've become everything to me. Your questions, your mind, your heart, your spirit, I love all of you, and I want to spend my life answering whatever questions you might ask." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision as joy filled her heart. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, Isaac, I will marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then, heedless of the remaining townspeople, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, sealing their promise amid the glow of Christmas candles. The news of their engagement spread through Shafter like wildfire. By New Year's Day, there wasn't a soul in town who hadn't offered congratulations or shared an opinion on the match. To Winifred's relief, the school board led by Martha Wilson expressed nothing but approval. "We were hoping you'd settle permanently in Shafter," Martha confided. "A married teacher is even better than a single one, less likely to run off back east when things get difficult." The winter months passed in a whirl of teaching and planning. They decided on an April wedding when the wildflowers would be blooming and before the intense heat of summer set in. Isaac began work on expanding the main house at the Circle K, adding rooms and modern conveniences to make it a proper home for a new bride. Winifred wrote long letters to her family in Boston, describing Isaac, the town, and her happiness in this new life. Their responses were cautiously supportive, though her mother expressed concerns about her marrying a man they had never met. Her father was more understanding, writing, "If he values your mind as you say and treats you with respect, then he has my blessing, though I would still like to meet this cowboy who has captured my daughter's heart." As the wedding approached, practical questions arose that required answers. Would Winifred continue teaching after marriage? Where would they live immediately after the wedding, since the house renovations might not be complete? "I'd like to finish the school year at least," Winifred said one evening as they sat by the fire in Mrs. Abernathy's parlor. "The children are making such progress, and it would be disruptive to bring in a new teacher with only weeks remaining." "Of course," Isaac agreed readily. "And after that, if you wish to continue teaching, I would support it. The ranch is only a few miles from town you could ride in daily." His easy acceptance of her career touched her deeply. "And what about after the wedding? Where shall we live until the house is ready?" "Mrs. Abernathy has offered to let us take the larger suite upstairs," Isaac said. "It has a separate sitting room and bedroom, almost like a small apartment." "It wouldn't be for long. The house should be ready by early summer." Winifred nodded, grateful for the practical solution. Then a new thought occurred to her. "Isaac, we've spoken of so many things, but never of children. Do you want a family?" His expression softened. "Very much." "Not right away necessarily. We should have time just for us first. But yes, I've always wanted children." He took her hand. "What about you?" "I do," she said quietly. "I love teaching, but having our own family, that would be wonderful." The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers across the prairie. The entire town turned out for the ceremony at the small church, which had been decorated with bluebonnets and white roses brought in specially from San Antonio. Winifred wore a gown of ivory satin that Mrs. Abernathy and several other town women had helped her sew, with lace from her mother's wedding dress incorporated into the bodice. In the absence of her father, the town's mayor escorted her down the aisle to where Isaac waited, his face alight with love and pride. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged traditional vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish each other for all their days. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac's kiss was tender and reverent, a promise of the life they would build together. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening with dancing, feasting, and toasts to the new couple's happiness. As the sun began to set, they slipped away to Mrs. Abernathy's, where their new suite awaited, decorated with flowers and candles by the thoughtful widow. In the privacy of their first home together, Isaac took his wife in his arms. "Mrs. Keller," he murmured against her hair. "I like the sound of that." "As do I, Mr. Keller." Winifred's heart was full to bursting with love and anticipation of their life together. "Though my students will still call me Miss Lawrence until the end of the term to avoid confusion." Isaac laughed softly. "Always practical, my love." His expression grew more serious. "Are you happy, Winnie? Truly happy with your choice? This life is so different from what you knew in Boston." In answer, she reached up to touch his face, tracing the beloved features with gentle fingers. "I have never been happier," she said with absolute conviction. "You are everything I never knew I was searching for." Their life together unfolded with the seasons. True to his word, Isaac completed the ranch house renovations by early summer, creating a comfortable home with special touches he knew would please his wife: large windows to let in natural light, built-in bookshelves for her growing collection, and a small study where she could work on lesson plans if she chose to continue teaching. Winifred did return to the schoolhouse that fall, riding to town each morning and back to the ranch each evening. She found that marriage had enhanced rather than diminished her teaching, giving her new perspectives and energy to bring to her students. The town grew and prospered with the arrival of the railroad the following year. New families moved to Shafter, bringing children who swelled the school's enrollment. Winifred campaigned successfully for an assistant teacher and for the town library she had dreamed of, which opened in a small building next to the schoolhouse in 1877. Isaac's ranch flourished as well. His progressive breeding practices and smart business decisions expanded the Circle K until it was one of the most successful operations in the county. He never lost his love of learning, continuing to read from the books Winifred brought home and engaging in spirited discussions about everything from cattle markets to philosophy. Their partnership was the foundation of their success, his practical knowledge complementing her theoretical education, her organizational skills enhancing his natural leadership abilities. Together they weathered the challenges that came with life on the frontier: droughts, cattle fever, economic downturns, and the occasional conflict with rustlers or other troublemakers. In the spring of 1878, Winifred discovered she was expecting their first child. She continued teaching until it became impractical, then focused her energy on preparing the ranch house for the new arrival. Isaac was a devoted husband throughout her pregnancy, ensuring she had everything she needed and reading every medical text he could find about childbirth and infant care. Their son, William Thomas Keller, was born on a crisp November morning with the help of the town doctor and Mrs. Abernathy, who had become like family to them both. Isaac wept when he first held his son, overwhelmed by the miracle they had created together. "He has your eyes," Winifred said weakly from the bed, exhausted but radiant. "And your curiosity," Isaac replied, noting how the infant's gaze seemed to take in everything around him. "Look at him, already asking questions without words," Winifred laughed. "If he inherits my tendency to question everything, you'll have your hands full answering him." Isaac sat carefully beside her on the bed, cradling their son between them. "I promised to answer every question, didn't I? That goes for William too." As their family grew, a daughter, Elizabeth, joined them 2 years later, followed by another son, James. In 1882, Winifred and Isaac remained true to the promise that had begun their relationship. No question was too trivial or too profound to be answered, no curiosity discouraged. Their home became known throughout the county as a place of learning and lively discussion. The library they established in one wing of the ranch house was open to neighboring families, and Winifred held informal classes for children who lived too far from town to attend school regularly. In 1885, a decade after Winifred had first arrived in Shafter, her parents finally made the journey from Boston to visit their daughter and the family they had never met. Winifred waited anxiously at the train station, her 3 children scrubbed and dressed in their best clothes, Isaac standing tall and proud beside her. The reunion was emotional, with tears and embraces and exclamations over how the children favored both sides of the family. Her father, now retired from teaching, was particularly taken with Isaac's ranching operation and the extensive library they had built. Her mother, initially reserved, melted when she saw how clearly Isaac adored her daughter and grandchildren. "You were right to come west," her father told Winifred privately on the final evening of their visit. "I've never seen you so fulfilled, so completely yourself." "I found where I belong," she replied simply. "With Isaac, with the children, with this life we've built together." The years passed, bringing changes to Shafter and to the Circle K. The frontier town gradually became a proper small city, with paved streets, electric lighting, and eventually even telephone service. The ranching industry evolved, and Isaac adapted, always keeping the Circle K profitable through innovation and hard work. Their children grew, each finding their own path. William, the eldest, combined his father's ranching knowledge with his mother's love of education, eventually taking over the Circle K and establishing a breeding program that became famous throughout Texas. Elizabeth attended college in the East, returning with a husband and a degree in medicine to become Shafter's first female doctor. James, the youngest, discovered a passion for writing and became a journalist, chronicling the changing face of the West for readers across the nation. Through it all, Winifred and Isaac remained deeply in love, their partnership only strengthening with time. Gray appeared in their hair, lines formed around their eyes, but when they looked at each other, they still saw the schoolteacher with endless questions and the cowboy who had promised to answer every one. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1905, the entire community gathered at the Circle K for a celebration. The ranch had grown into a showplace, with a grand main house, multiple outbuildings, and hundreds of acres of prime grazing land. Their children and grandchildren were all present, along with former students, neighbors, and friends who had shared in their journey. After the feasting and speeches, Winifred and Isaac slipped away to sit on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. "Did you ever imagine this life when you stepped off that stagecoach?" Isaac asked, taking her hand in his. Winifred smiled, thinking back to that dusty day so many years ago. Never. I came to teach, to bring knowledge to the frontier. I had no idea I would find everything I ever wanted. Any regrets? He asked, his voice gentle. It was a question he asked every year on their anniversary, a tradition they had maintained. Not one, she replied, as she always did. Though I do have one more question. Isaac laughed, the sound as warm and beloved as it had been when she first heard it. Of course you do. Ask away, my love. I promise to answer everyone. Remember, Winifred leaned her head against his shoulder, content in the life they had created together. Do you think there are questions in heaven? Will we still have this wonderful exchange of ideas and curiosity even after our time here ends? Isaac was silent for a moment, considering her question with the seriousness it deserved. I believe, he said finally, that what makes us ourselves doesn't end with this life. Your curiosity, your beautiful mind, those are eternal things. So yes, I think there will be questions in heaven, and I plan to be right beside you, answering every one I can. Satisfied, Winifred closed her eyes, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling for the night. From inside the house came the laughter of their grandchildren, the future they had built together. Outside, the Texas twilight deepened toward night, stars beginning to appear in the vast sky above. It had begun with questions in a schoolhouse and a cowboy who offered answers. It had become a lifetime of love, learning, and shared discovery. As the first evening star appeared overhead, Winifred knew with absolute certainty that she had found exactly where she belonged beside this man who had never tired of her questions. In this life they had created together on the Texas frontier. I love you, Isaac Keller, she said softly. He pressed a kiss to her temple. And I love you, Winifred Keller. Every question, every answer, every day we've shared. They sat together as darkness fell, surrounded by the legacy of their love, a thriving ranch, a growing town, children and grandchildren who would carry forward their values of curiosity, learning, and respect for knowledge in all its forms. It had been a good life, a full life, born from the courage to ask questions and the wisdom to recognize the answers when they appeared. And in the end, that had made all the difference.